Cosatu General Secretary Zwelinzima Mavavi, who's on the line for me this morning. Mr. Vavi, good morning. Thanks indeed for coming through for us this morning. But you are opposed to the National Development Plan. Why?
We think that the goals of the NDP as articulated in terms of addressing education, dealing with unemployment and bringing the unemployment figures to 6% in 2030 and a lot of others, we are very happy with those objectives. But the instruments that the NDP is proposing in every respect in terms of how we're going to be achieving all of that are quite frankly, borrowed from the conservative side of business. In fact, to be frank with you, the NDP may be the biggest victory scored by capital since the days of gross employment and redistribution strategy of 1996. In their tenant, this is not different, very different from one another. GIA also had very laudable objectives: growth, employment, redistribution, dealing with inequalities. NDP have the same very laudable objectives, but the instruments they're choosing are quite conservative, pro-business, and they made us to, frankly, to the road of market fundamentalism.
Let me understand you thoroughly. Let me understand you thoroughly, Mr. Vavi. You are saying that GIA and the NDP one and the same thing?
They're almost not far from one another, frankly. If you look at what they're proposing, firstly, they're talking about the same thing. The macroeconomic framework that we have seen so far is okay. There's nothing wrong. There mustn't be any discussion about the very problematic inflation targeting that continues to keep our interest rates high. They're talking about labor market flexibility, and that's where the whole controversy of youth wage subsidy is in fact flowing from. They're talking about making education essential services. In fact, the whole idea that the teachers mustn't have a right to strike is flowing from the NDP. Quite a number of other quite problematic propositions are quite there. So I guess there will have to be a discussion. The NDP can't be elevated to the level of the Freedom Charter.
But when did Cosatu realize this? When did Cosatu realize this? I mean, we were in Mangaung last December, and this was adopted by the African National Congress's conference, and Cosatu didn't raise an objection.
We did. Frankly, we did at the level of the commissions, but we were simply not successful. In fact, our objections were not taken into consideration. There was an attempt to at least mediate some form of a not so offensive language, but that's all it meant. It meant that the NDP is adopted despite our views on it.
But what will happen now?
We're going to make a more detailed assessment. In fact, we are in the process of doing so. And we'll share with the public a much more detailed reasoning why we feel that this policy, whilst it has laudable objectives, but will not address the triple challenges of unemployment. In fact, it is a far cry from the promised radical economic transformation that we were speaking about from the policy conference of the ANC until now.
Just one last question, because the president and everyone who's spoken on the NDP have called upon society, all sectors of society, business, labor, civil society, to rally behind the NDP in terms of its implementation. What then will happen? What are you going to do? Are you going to work against it?
No, we think that there must be a discussion. We're not saying that we will work against it. That decision will have to be taken by the CC. But just coincidentally, it is no accident that Musa and all of the other different business associations are so thrilled about that strategy because it favors their interests fundamentally. And we think that there is a lot of issues to discuss here with the leadership.